Good evening. Welcome to the Transportation and Parking Commission meeting for Monday, April 26th, 2010. Let's begin our regular agenda, please.
Item 1, regular business agenda. Item 1A, roll call. Commissioner Fuad.
Here.
Commissioner Sahakian.
Here.
Commissioner Yakubian. Here. Commissioner Wiseman.
Here.
Chairperson Welch.
Here. Next item, please.
Item 1B, flag salute. Chairperson Welch.
Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 2 is posting of the agenda. The agenda for the Monday, April 26, 2010 regular meeting of the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission was posted by Friday, April 23, 2010 before 5:30 p.m. on the bulletin board outside of City Hall.
Thank you. Next item.
Item 3 is approval of minutes. Item 3A, March 22, 2010 meeting approval of minutes.
Does anyone have any comments or corrections on the minutes?
No.
Somebody like to move that we accept the minutes?
I'll move that be accepted.
A second. Thank you very much. We'll accept the minutes. Next item, please.
Item 4 is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The Commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision.
I have no speaker cards for oral communications, so with that, I will close oral communications. And next item, please.
Item 5 is action items. Item 5A is report regarding installation of speed humps on North Louise Street between Stalker Street and Mountain Street. At 5A1 is motion recommending installation of 2 speed humps on North Louise Street between Stalker Street and Mountain Street.
If anyone from the public would like to speak on any of this item or any of the other items, please fill out a card and bring it up here so we can have your name on the list. So, okay, with that, Mr. Bagdani.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Transportation Parking Commission, Tommy Chow, Traffic Engineering Associate, has prepared the next 3 staff reports on the traffic calming issues that is for your consideration. I'd like to have Tommy make a brief presentation, and we've also invited the residents on those particular streets to provide input to the Commission so that based on the staff recommendation analysis and input from the residents, the Commission can make a decision on these traffic calming measures that are being recommended. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Tommy.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Tommy Chow, and tonight I will be presenting the 3 TPC reports for the installation of speed humps and lumps on Louise Street, Altera Avenue, and Elk Avenue. My first presentation is for the speed humps on North Louise Street between Stalker Street and Mountain Street. In December 2009, staff received a request from a resident to install speed humps on North Louise Street between Stalker Street and Mountain Street because of excessive travel speed and cut-through traffic from adjacent neighborhoods. Per the city's neighborhood traffic calming program, staff conducted a traffic engineering study on North Louise Street to determine whether the street met the criteria for installing speed humps. The results of the study is shown in the table above. We looked at the travel speed, the travel lanes, made sure there's 1 lane in each direction. We made sure that the street is in a residential district. We also made sure that the street was a local street and the posted speed limit was 25 miles per hour. We also conducted a speed survey to see what the 85th percentile speed was, and based on our survey, the 85th percentile speed was 31 miles per hour. The daily volume was 1,075 cars. The street isn't a truck or transit route, and it's not a primary response route. The street width is 40 feet. We sent out a petition to the resident, and he obtained 89% of the residents in favor of installing speed humps on his street. It is also important to note that in July 2002, the Glendale City Council approved the traffic calming master plan, which included the installation of 4 speed lumps on North Louise Street between Glen Oaks and Stalker Street. At the time, speeding was not an issue on North Louise Street between Stalker and Mountain Street. Therefore, speed humps were not included on this segment of North Louise Street in the 2002 traffic calming master plan. Since this segment of North Louise Street meets the criteria for installing speed hump, staff recommends that the TPC approves the installation of 2 speed humps on North Louise Street between Stalker Street and Mountain Street.
Mr. Chairman, we've also provided you with information from until before the commission meeting. If we received any comments from residents who could not be here tonight, for each one of those traffic calming requests, there is a written comment for or against each particular one that has been provided to you.
Should I read these into the record?
It doesn't have to be, no. We will include it as part of the record unless, that makes a difference in your decision.
Well, just very briefly, I'll just note for the record that I had 3 that came in from residents. Generally speaking, 2 of them supported, 1 of them does not. Okay.
Thank you.
You have anything more to add?
No, Mr. Chairman. We're prepared to answer any questions if the commission has or...
Any questions before we hear from the public?
I'm assuming the city council, by adopting what they did in 2002 with the absence of humps or lumps on any particular street, doesn't suggest they didn't want them there. They just weren't included at the time for lack of...
That's correct. At the time, we were looking at entire area, and from when we prepared that plan, we're working with the homeowners association, representative from all the different schools, streets in the area. And that part of Louise Street, we did random speed checks on most of these segments. As you can see, the lower part of Louise Street, we had speeding problems, so we installed speed humps. The upper part did not appear to have a speeding problem, or at least at the time the residents did not complain about it. So since then is when they have complained about it in the petition to installation of any kind of traffic calming measure, which in this case, the traffic speed humps are the ones that we recommend.
And for the uneducated, what's the difference between a lump and a hump again?
The lumps are, one of the concerns with speed humps in general is fire emergency. In other words, the fire department is in general not in favor of installation of speed humps because it slows them down. If you imagine larger fire trucks, the ones that have a hook and ladder, in fact, and if they have to respond to an emergency and they have to go over every one of those humps, basically it slows them down somewhere between 7 to 10 seconds. So we will work with the fire department to, first of all, designate emergency response route. That on those routes, absolutely, we try not to put in any speed humps or bumps because that is their primary route. In case of, in this area, there are 1 or 2 routes that will provide access to the northern and the hillside areas or the upper levels. So we work with the fire department to at least every other street we don't have speed humps on it, so they have an alternative to go through. But on streets that we don't have a choice, that we have to put them in, basically you put the speed hump and you put in 2 openings that is based on the width of the wheelbase of a fire truck. So a fire truck, if it's going down the street as they approach the speed hump, there are 2 openings that are cut out of the hump, and they can...
So humps have the gaps.
Humps have the gaps, lumps have the gaps, the humps don't.
And some streets, I noticed the lumps are bigger and longer than others. Is that...
there is...
just historical or just...
No, most of them are pretty... They're all pretty 12 feet long.
But I mean, this way, the
depth,
the width, the length.
The length is still...
Depends on the street.
It might be some streets that are wider streets and we have a longer width, but in general...
I mean the opposite. I mean, with the
height. The height
and the length or the width of the height, if you will.
Some of the height, again, remember we are trying to get this exactly somewhere between 3.25 inches with when they're rolling the asphalt is not very, very scientific. So there are some that once you install them, although we try to put a template and we try to, get the height in, Some of them are become a little higher. Once you install them and they cure, it's very hard. You have to, remove them again and install them. We've done that on some streets, like Ethel Street, for example. When we installed them, unfortunately, they were kind of very low at the low end. When we were doing the street improvements, we removed them and we put them in. They went a little higher than what we expected. So there is a difference on street. In fact, in that Mountain Rossman area, you'll see that there are some humps that are higher, some humps that are lower.
But the width,
The width in general should stay 12 feet. That's the width.
I don't think he's referring to curb width. He's
not
referring
curb to curb, the other
to from when
No.
the tire hits the top and rolls along the top.
I know what
12 feet.
That's 12 feet. It is 12.
I drive on Lower Louise all the time, and those are 12 feet.
Yeah, most. I mean, that is, we have a standard of between 3.25 inch high, 12 feet. The width as you go across, if you're driving over it, that's from the beginning to the end. It's like a parabolic curve. From this end of the parabolic curve to the other end, it should be 12 feet. That's our template standard. And the curb to curb, of course, varies if it's a wider street or a narrower street. But we install them on a 40-foot wide streets.
Okay.
Or less.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Any other questions? No? Okay, so let's open the public hearing. I have Frank Corf?
Thank you. My name is Frank Cordum. I'm a resident of Louise Street. I want to thank the staff, Mr. Chow in particular, for cooperating with us and getting the petitions, preparing the petitions for us to circulate. I was very impressed as I went from house to house to get the petitions, how everyone was really felt the drastic need for these speed bumps, because that particular section of Louise Street has kind of become a thoroughfare for people wanting to take a shortcut down from Mountain Street to get to closer to Glen Oaks Boulevard. And there's more and more young children in the neighborhood. I'm very concerned some kid who's not paying attention will chase a ball out in the street and get hit. And so I think that this will focus people's attention on the need to drive safely in that area.
Do you find that the speed issue is more coming from Mountain down or the other way or equally?
I would say it's a problem in both directions. I think because it's a downhill slope, people tend to get going faster going in the downhill direction, but they go plenty fast in the uphill direction as well. Like I say, and almost everyone I encountered was supportive. I did run into one family who said, well, I don't drive fast, so there's no need for speed bumps. And I had trouble understanding that position. It's not my problem. It's not with them. If they drive safely, that's no problem. It's the people from out of the neighborhood that are coming through and driving fast. They're the ones that I think these bumps are needed to control. Very much.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Rita Lozano.
Good afternoon or good evening. I'm Rita Lozano from 1230 North Louise, and I wanted to thank you for taking the petition for putting these bumps so slow the traffic. We find out that it's more and more traffic in Louise, and I think coming up from the mountain, which is higher where we live, they're coming very fast, and coming the other way, coming from south to north, they also speed because there's no stop signs, nothing to stop them. And late at night, there is even cars just going like racing. I hear it from my bedroom, and it's increasingly more now. The traffic, it doesn't take the time to slow down. And sometimes I am outside in my garden and I see the car just flying, you know. So there is a lot of families in my street. I don't have a family, but it's very dangerous with those cars that they speed so fast. So thank you for putting this in order and see if it goes through. It'd be very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have no more speaker cards on Louise. So with that, I'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, just for you now to know, Tommy verified the speeds. Downhill is 33 miles an hour, uphill is 30. Again, once you combine the data both direction and, we do a kind of a statistical analysis through the formula, it comes out about 31. I mean, you can round it one way or the other, but that verifies the concern of the residents where obviously it's going downhill, it's higher speed. So the 85th is 33 miles an hour. That's the speed that 85% of the people are driving at or below that speed. So it's going downhill is 33, uphill is 30.
Do you have any information as to what the highest speed recorded during the speed survey was?
Highest speed, Tommy can... Mr. Chairman, we do have... There were 12 incidents of 42 miles an hour, but our counter basically but we measure up to 42. There might be some speeds above that, but the 42 is what we measured as part of our traffic counts at the time on the day that we counted. So there are some high speeds. That's over they're in that 15% that go over the 31 mile an hour that we've established in the staff report.
Was it a single day of study, or was it several days?
It's a one day. We take a one-day measurement as a typical day.
Okay. Okay, let's open it up for comments and discussion. Who would like to go first?
Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure that the downhill grade meets the guidelines. I did drive it, and I'm not sure if we measured it, and if we look at the IT guidelines, I just want to make sure that there's no liabilities in the future.
I measured it this afternoon. It's like 4.1 or something, and our guideline is 8%.
It is.
So it meets it.
Okay. Is there any other comments? Yes.
Just briefly, in the interest of full disclosure, I know one of the residents on this street, on Louise, and I did speak to her regarding this petition, and she did sign it and is in favor of it. However, even if that were not the case, I would still, pretty much as a matter of course, be willing to approve this because all of the conditions are met and because of the widespread support via petition. So,
Jono, how many approvals has the commission given for speed humps in the city that have still not been installed yet?
We have one, which is only Elk Street. Elk Street that has not been installed yet, and the reason we haven't done it is we try to combine a couple of these traffic calming installations like speed humps together, and if there's a contract coming up, we include it because we get a better price. So should the commission approve these three that you're considering tonight, we'll combine them all together and we'll try to get them in as soon as possible.
And how much does it cost to install each one of these humps or lumps?
About $3,000. Again, depends on the quantity. If we can get a bunch of them together, it's a little cheaper, but
okay.
We've ranged $2,500 to $3,000. There's been some times where the asphalt was expensive and contractors are very busy, so we paid higher prices too. But right now, about $3,000 is the good unit
So
price.
on this particular one there, where there's two being called for, it would be $6,000 for that
Yes,
street? Yes,
that's right.
give or take.
And also, Mr. Chair, the signs associated with it, that's also at a cost.
Yeah, there's a minor signing striping cost. It's maybe close to $200-300 maximum.
Okay. I mean, I'll be honest, I was a little, all of these cases tonight are very marginal to me because they're just barely hitting the baselines, and I think you had made a comment at one point in time about converting all of the streets in the city into speed hump streets. So, again, I'm inclined to go along with it, but I'm just concerned that, the precedent that is being established here, and it just does tend to shift, speeding around, and we might end up with the whole city full of speed bumps if we're not careful. So,
Mr. Chairman, your points are well taken, and to be honest with you, we deny so many of requests from residents because, if there are less than 1,000 cars, but the speeds are there, we tell them, we hold to those guidelines. And, or the volume is there and the speeds are not there. I mean, everybody has a perception that, there's a lot of speed. So, and there are some, but it's not frequent enough that you would say that there is a safety issue. But when it comes down to some of these residential streets and, you start recording some of the higher speeds, or you also need to look at the number of residential units. In this case, there's about, Louise, there's 27 homes. So if you average about 10 trips, which is on the high side per unit, per residential unit, there's 270 cars that would be generated by those residents, but you get about 1,000 or so cars going through. Obviously, from Mountain, everybody goes down in the morning, comes back up in the afternoon. So the shortcutting occurs, and that frequency sometimes is where you should also consider in terms of impact to the residential that is not generating as much traffic, but then people are speeding downhill.
Okay.
Sure, if I can, make one comment, and this goes to the public, and it's applicable to all three items. The speed humps are extremely noisy at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning. There will be a bunch of motorists that will not slow down. They have trucks, they have big tires, they will not slow down. I've seen many instances in the city of LA where there was a petition signed by 90% of residents, only to come back 3-4 months later with the same amount of people signing to remove those speed humps because they can't sleep at night. I just want to put it out there so you can, I mean, we should have probably done it before the petition was signed, but it is an issue. It is definitely an issue.
Thank you. Okay, so somebody would like to move the motion?
I'll move to pass the on Louise.
Second.
Okay, let's do roll call, please.
Commissioner Flood?
Aye.
Commissioner Sahakian?
Aye.
Commissioner Yakubian?
Yes.
Commissioner Weisman?
Yes.
Chairperson Welch?
Yes. Next item, please, 5B.
Item 5B is report regarding installation of speed lumps on Altera Avenue between Dunsmore Avenue and New York Avenue. At 5B1 is motion recommending installation of 4 speed lumps on Altera Avenue between Dunsmore Avenue and New York Avenue.
Thank you.
Make the staff presentation.
My second presentation is for the speed lumps on Altera Avenue between Dunsmore Avenue and New York Avenue. In January of 2009, staff received a request from a resident on Altera Avenue to install speed humps because of excessive speeding and cut-through traffic. However, since this segment of Altera Avenue is classified as a primary emergency response route, only speed lumps could be considered. The resident stated that because of the width of the street and the close distance to Lincoln Elementary School and Foothill Boulevard, there was a lot of speeding and cut-through traffic on this segment of Altera Avenue. Staff conducted a traffic engineering study on Altera Avenue between Dunsmore and New York Avenue. The following table shows our findings. So it meets all the conditions like the previous one. The 85th percentile speed was 39 miles per hour, which is really high for a local street. The volume was 1,675. This was a primary emergency response route, but since the street was wide enough for us to install speed lumps, then we could consider it. The petition had 85% of the residents in favor of it. Since Altera Avenue satisfied all the required criteria for the installation of speed lumps, staff requests that the TPC approves the installation of 4 speed lumps on Altera Avenue between Dunsmore Avenue and New York Avenue. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? Okay, let's open up the public hearing. First up is Larry Stammer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. I'm a resident of Altera Avenue. I want to thank you for your diligence, regardless of your upcoming vote, no matter which way it goes. I do thank you for your help and for the staff's diligence in being so good in following through on residents' concerns. I normally do not like driving over these things, but I am here in support of the staff's recommendation. As he said, it is a street that runs parallel with Foothill Boulevard and also Honolulu Boulevard just below. And it is used, I think, just intuitively as an alternative to those streets. As people go to work and they come home from work, they want to avoid the traffic, Pennsylvania and Foothills, so they come down Altura. And as the staff noted, there's also an elementary school, Lincoln Elementary School there. So I do worry about children going to and from school in the morning and in the afternoon, running out between a car. That's an aside problem which is not before you, but there are a lot of cars parked on that street. Now, my home is up on a flag lot, and so we share a common driveway with two other homes. And my home is at 3461 Altura. And I've had a couple of occasions where I'm trying to ease into the traffic. There are blind spots because of utility poles and parked vehicles. And I'll get out into Altura and I'll look in my rearview mirror and there's this car right on my tail, and I thought, where did he come from? And they do drive pretty fast. I'm glad that the staff actually quantified it. I was only estimating 40 miles an hour, or sometimes higher. So I just wanted to apprise you of that. Just an aside, one time when I was pulling out, and I know it would have been my fault, pulling in onto this residential street, but a car had to swerve to avoid me. He was coming so fast, and perhaps I wasn't attentive enough. I'm going to be as objective as I can. But cars do speed down this street. I won't repeat anything else that the staff has already apprised you of. I think that'll pretty well do it. I do support it, and thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Tim Mitchell.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Tim Mitchell. I am a resident of 3500 block of Altera. Thank you, first of all, by explaining the noise situation, because my first thing to talk to everybody about is everybody signed a petition, but who has been really educated on just what's going to happen? Have they been given Broadview, Prospect, streets to drive down and see what actually is going to happen? Their quality of life is going to be diminished greatly. I'm not here to be against that. We have a huge problem with Altera, and I'm a taxpayer in the same home for 23 years. Things need to be done. People do drive too fast. Is this the answer? I don't believe so, and I don't believe enough time has gone into. I'm shocked to see all the work that's been done, and I get a letter last Monday stating that we're already at the point of having it. So I don't even know if my being here and speaking on it is adequate. You know, I would have rather been in a town hall meeting with some of my neighbors in my backyard, really having a discussion about this prior to this. Anyway, since we're here, some of the things that I'd like to ask about is there are no speed limit signs on this street whatsoever. Haven't had a speed limit sign on my street in 23 years. I'm shocked because I'm illegal. I'm looking here that our speed limit is 25 miles per hour. I always thought it was 30. So I'm guilty. Maybe a couple signs. You know, how about a sign at both ends stating, I mean, this street is, there's a lot more than 1,600 cars going down this street. I don't know what your time frame was for your report, but it's not accurate. And there's going to be a lot of people upset with these bumps because this feeds half of La Crescenta. The whole north portion of Glendale is fed by Altera, Dunsmore, Lauderdale, all the houses on 1st through 5th. There are many people, and I doubt that they were invited tonight. I'm having a feeling that 50-something letters were sent out for the people directly affected. And there's a whole bunch of people who are going to be lined up the next time it's an opportunity. So be careful what they wish for. I'd like to see signs. I'd like to see a slow down sign. There's communities I work in all over town that there's little yellow signs that, whether people put them up on their own or the city, says slow down. How about a sign at both ends saying, this stretch of Altera is considering speed bumps? Maybe sometimes people just need to be woke up and say, hey, we're driving too fast on this street. There should be some opportunity to do something other than put bumps on the street. I drive down every day. I'm over these bumps, and they are terrible. Thank you for the classification of what a lump is, because up to this point, I did not know what a lump was. A lump is tolerable, and I'm glad if we did drastically have to go to that's what would go. I drive heavy trucks. Unfortunately, that's just my trade. I don't have a choice. The noise is a huge situation. I was hoping to be in front of a council asking to have Altera repaved. It's been years since we've had a paving job on Altera. In front of my house, there are weeds growing on Altera. We have a lot flagged behind us that has a depression in the asphalt. It wakes me up every night, and so one of these bumps is going to be 30 feet in front of the lump a depression, excuse me, and you're right, I'm going to be up every night. So I'd like to think that in today's world, there's some technology out there that we can slow people down. Maybe even, why don't we get together and hire a cop and get some tickets, once one of these kids got 4 tickets and it's $1,000, don't you think that, that'd slow me down. I go down Pennsylvania and Honolulu every day. There's 2 signs there. Blink, blink, blink. 37. I better go down to 35. That's what you do. And it reminds us that, it's a fast world, but there's laws here. You can drive down this street. There is nothing on this street that says anything about what the speed limit is and how dangerous these people are being. I agree with we have a problem. I just don't agree with me having to put up with a few people that break the law. And I'm the one. My quality of life is, again, questioned. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Karen Fries.
Thank you, Commissioners, City staff. My name is Karen Fries. I'm a 20-year resident of 3412 Altera. And I asked Mr. Chow to go ahead and forward you a packet that I sent earlier. On October 31st, 2008, at 6:40 in the morning, we had a car speed through our yard and eventually end up in our neighbor's house. From that morning on, our lives have changed. We park our cars differently. We moved our son into a different room because it was only a matter of feet from where he would have been. We're living our lives differently. But we're thankful because all we had to lose was some restructuring of our home and parking our cars differently. Had this accident occurred 1 hour later, we would have had many children and many parents in front of our house. And thinking about what the consequences could be for speeding cars on that street within 300 feet of Lincoln Elementary School, it's catastrophic. We can't allow people to be speeding on our street in the midst of children going to school, in the midst of people walking down our sidewalk. Since that time, there was an additional accident at 3426, again within 300 feet of Lincoln School, that totaled 2 cars. The lady was going so fast that she pushed one car into the other and both were totaled, along with her car. After that, another accident at 3411 across the street from us. Again, a car was badly damaged to the point where they wanted to total it. These are all accidents that have occurred within the school area, and it's caused all of us to live our lives differently. Please, I ask, we can replace cars, we can replace homes, but we can't replace lives. Thank you for your kind consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker, Bill Dodson.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Bill Dodson. I live at 3420 Altera, next door to the Freezes. Mine was the house that was damaged by the pickup truck. That particular morning, it had been raining. It was, as she says, shortly before 7 a.m. And I was in my, what I call my den, probably 2 minutes before the truck hit my house. I went in to see if it was raining because I was going to put my jacket on and go to breakfast. And I was in the garage when the pickup truck hit my house. It was a young man that left the stop sign at Lincoln School, probably 200 feet from the intersection, came across the Freeze's front yard, took out part of their porch, took out my fence, slammed into my house, broke 3 walls in the foundation, cost about $60,000 to repair it. Reckless driving, speeding. He just left the stop sign on a wet street. The janitor at the school heard him when he left, screeching his tires. Never slowed down, probably hit my house going 40, 45 miles an hour. The other accident that happened shortly after mine was the 2 parked cars in front of my neighbor's house. They were hit head-on from a car going in the opposite direction from where the cars were parked. The car hit them, was going westbound, the cars were parked eastbound, shoved the front car into the back car, which was a pickup truck, put the rear end of the truck up on the sidewalk, 250 feet from the intersection of the stop sign. Later on, within less than a year's time, this all happened within a year and a half, close to Dunsmore, the same exact situation happened up there. Car going westbound, front-ended a car parked on the eastbound direction. Totaled. And I'm sure that both the other cars were totaled beside. That's 4 accidents plus the one that she refers to that was down closer to the school. And I'm here to support the speed lumps. I worked for the fire department 30 years. We didn't have speed lumps, we didn't have speed bumps, but the lumps do accommodate the equipment because they can go through there. Most of the traffic that comes out of the fire station on New York, which I worked for a good many years, uses Altera and goes eastbound. Occasionally they come to the west, but not that often. Most of the traffic is either straight down to Honolulu or it goes over to Pennsylvania and down Pennsylvania. But in any case, my concern is we've got far too much speed. And it is a 2-block area we're talking about. It's a long street. And there is a downslope on that. And there's cars out there. It's a racetrack at times. And I'm not a fan of speed bumps or lumps, but I don't know any alternative to slow traffic down. People don't pay attention to signs. You can put all the signs you want up there. It's not going to slow them down. If it's early morning, it's dark, I back out. If I see headlights coming down the street, I don't move until those headlights go by me because I have no idea how fast they're coming. But I would venture that they have 39 miles an hour. There's cars that are doing 50 and 55 and 60 going down that street. Doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. My concern is the safety for the kids at school. That morning that truck hit my house, if it had been an hour later, that street would have been full of kids. And I have concern about the safety of the kids and the speed that we're doing. We all know Glendale is getting to be worse and worse with speed and the driving habits of the people. Anyhow, I strongly support the speed lumps, and I think it's the only alternative we have to slow traffic down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next one is Montorez or Monty.
very much for giving us the opportunity to share our stories with you. My name is Cuauhtemoc Moti Torres. I had the privilege of circulating the petition on behalf of the community. And I'd just like to say that as I went from door to door circulating the petition, I heard a lot of compelling stories of which you're just getting a flavor of here tonight. I've been a resident of that section of Altera. I live at 3524 Altera. I've been a resident for about 24 months now, a little bit over that time. And just within that threshold of time, I've seen the accidents that Karen referred to, that Bill just discussed. A couple of streets down from my house, there was an accident where a couple of cars were totaled. And the interesting thing about that accident is that when I spoke to the neighbor or the homeowner, he actually said that that's the second time his car has been totaled as a result of parking it on the street in front of his house. So we definitely have a problem. It's like a plague. We have a plague of drivers who are just erratic in their behavior, engaging in reckless behavior, and driving at dangerous, excessive speeds down our street. It's really impacted the quality of life in the area. And as some of the folks have already expressed, that's a thoroughfare, a walking fare, if you will, for children and their parents to get to Lincoln Elementary School. And I don't know if you have the information before you now, but the principal, Mr. Carr, did submit a statement in support of the speed lumps for that very reason, because he sees it as a high-risk situation as well. So we appreciate you taking the time to listen to our stories. We hope that you can do something, because we really feel that it's just a matter of time before someone gets seriously hurt as a result of the erratic behavior and speed that's taking place on Altera. Speed bumps, or lumps, are they an inconvenience? Absolutely. But I think that's the whole point, is that they're inconvenient and therefore a deterrent for people speeding down the road. I don't like them, therefore others won't like them, but it will cause people to slow down. Absent any other measure, that's what we're asking you to. Thank you.
Thank you. Final speaker is Robin Griggs-Wood.
Hi there. I'd like to thank you very much for being here. I'm sure dinner and family sounds a lot more interesting right now. Basically, I've lived at 3500 Altera. It's in the direct middle of between Dunsmore and New York. And so people usually reach the pinnacle of their speed at that point. And while my kids are grown up now, I definitely feel for all the people that are living on our street. The one thing that came into my mind, and the reason why I showed up here, was I feel like they would be a little bit more efficacious on the school where the school is at. Even though this portion between Dunsmore and New York is longer, and I wouldn't complain if they went ahead and put them in, because the speed is just ghastly what some people do. It just seems like it would make more sense to have it near the school if there's funds limitations in terms of installation. The school is then in the next block, and really the primary purpose of those is to frustrate people headed for the freeway, people who don't really live on that street, people that are coming from west of Dunsmore. They're headed for the freeway. They don't really care, and they just want to go. They just want the fastest route to get to where they're going, and Altera is a wide street. So, to frustrate most people, just a few speed bumps somewhere in that area would be enough to make them go, I don't want to go there anymore. It drives me nuts. So I'm thinking it just would be a better idea. Not that that's an issue here, but that's my say. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'll also note, while we're still in public comments, that I have 3 additional people plus the principal of the Lincoln School did submit comments, although one of those 3 people was opposed. So with that, I'll close the public hearing and open it up for comments. Who'd like to go first?
Well, I have a quick question. What is the public outreach, responding to the one speaker, what is the public outreach on when speed lumps or bumps are being considered?
Mr. Chairman, we only notified the residents that are on that street. Our experience has been, particularly the street that is being impacted, and what has happened in the past, if you try to get additional streets involved, you're essentially what happens, you're pitting one residential streets on the other's residential street saying, they shouldn't get it because I don't like to drive on that street. So what our policy has been in notifications has been notifying the residents on the street that the speed humps are being installed, with the exception of when we're doing area-wide traffic calming program where you're working with the homeowners association or you're working with a larger geographic area in order to do that. Our position is that whoever is concerned about that, they should slow down. If they didn't speed up on that street, then the residents would not be in front of the commission to ask for some kind of a measure to lower the speed. That's been, very prevalent in most of these cases where we have installed speed humps. They're the only area that, in addition to potentially for the noise, although overall all the speed humps we've installed citywide, we have not received a complaint about the noise, although it's there because people slow down and the brakes make noise for the residents and that are adjacent to it. And there is a potential of shifting traffic. There are some streets where traffic may shift, and then we have to look at it from that perspective. Now we shifted the problem potentially as a shortcut area to the next street and, try to install speed humps on the next street, which is somewhat of the case which was in the Mountain-Ross Point area where we looked at the whole geographic area and we found out that, let's say, if we're looking at Louise and we treated Louise, then Jackson was a good primary street that could have been impacted, so we looked at the whole area at once. Specifically, our policy has been we notify the residents on that particular street. With the exception of if there are businesses adjacent at each end, we try to get the businesses and their employees if there are businesses at each end. In this case, we also notified the school.
So residents do get a letter?
Yes, an individual letter from us that this issue is being considered by the Transportation Parking Commission, but not outside the limits of that particular street.
And I would just, for my purposes, for future reference, if we could have a map, maybe showed a larger area, because the school isn't on this map or isn't shown on the map.
Yeah.
And New York, Honolulu, and those streets
right here.
Okay, aren't. Maybe in the future, maybe.
I think that's definitely, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Fott. I think it's a good idea. Actually, that was my observation myself. I asked Tommy to put up a larger aerial map, which is the aerial photo, but it's not as visible as you would want it to be, and identifying the key generators in the area, which will also help you to see why maybe some of this shortcutting is occurring. That we'll take care of next time.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Has there ever been a time in the past when you've put a sign like public, like how the planning department puts up big signs in front of a building where they're going to have a hearing? Have you ever done that in the past in these kinds of cases?
We've posted some signs in some areas where we have traffic calming, or it was a neighborhood meeting where we actually put it in stakes. Most of the time, what happens is people, remove them if people don't like them to be in front of their home. So we try to post them on the city's website, the notification to the residents, and directly, and it's posted at the city clerk's, public bulletin.
Okay. Who else? Yes.
I'd start off by saying that I live in the Crescenta Valley. I drive on Dunsmore and Pennsylvania and New York pretty much on a daily basis, and I'm familiar with those streets. I'm also familiar with Lincoln Elementary, and I've met Bill Card, the principal. And I guess a couple things that stand out in my mind looking at this here. One of the things that bothers me was the 85th percentile speed of 39 miles an hour, which is 14 miles an hour over the speed limit, which is 25. Now, I'm not sure if I'm remembering this correctly, but does not the DMV state that the de facto speed limit is 25 miles an hour within 500 feet of a school?
That's correct. In addition, if the street is of a residential nature, that you have 13 homes in a quarter mile of a spacing, automatically it's called prima facie 25 mile an hour speed. So throughout the city, we don't go and post every street with 25 mile an hour speed limit. If it looks like a residential street, it's expected that you drive at the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. In advance of the school, though, we emphasize with school signage or striping that it is a school area, or if the speed limit is higher than the 25, but when children are present, we sign it that it should be 25.
My inclination would be to sign it, just to make sure that people know that that is the speed limit. But the kind of the safety concerns for me trump the quality of life concerns. So when I see this high 85th percentile speed and hear some of the descriptions of the accidents that we've had, or hear about people's inability to back out of their driveways in a safe manner, that concerns me. And it kind of also makes me remember some of the previous cases we've dealt with, specifically Alameda Street. I think we had fairly long-term speeding problems on Alameda, which is right at the Glendale-Burbank border. And the city tried other measures before putting in speed humps. They did put in signage. They also put white striping to make the street visually look narrower and try to and hold down on the speed. I think the bottom line with the speed bumps, and we've heard it here tonight, I don't really know anybody that likes them. The reason that people want them is because they cannot be ignored. You can ignore stripes on the road, you can ignore signs, but you can't ignore those speed bumps. And I think it's unfortunate, perhaps, that we don't have other, less intrusive measures like, a cop on every street to give people tickets. But absent the ability to do that, I think this is, unfortunately, one of the best tools that's left in our arsenal. And compared to some of the others, it's also a fairly low-cost alternative. So that's where I'm at with this.
Thank you very much. Any more comments?
Yes. This is a tough one for me. It's a tough one for me because I don't like lumps. I've studied lumps. And just like the fire trucks that use the lumps, the openings, motorists use them too. We have them on mountain. I see them. As a matter of fact, my concern is that are we going to increase the number of head-on collisions if we do that? That is my concern, honestly. If it was bumps, I would vote for it. I might even vote for lumps because there is a problem here. No ifs and buts about it. There is a problem. Couple of questions to staff. Have we studied the type of accidents on Altera? Have we looked at them?
The accidents that have been reported are all speed related.
They're all no drunk driving. What about the age of the drivers?
We don't remember the age, but it's been the primary collision factor was speed.
Because my concern is motorist behavior in this instance. There's something going on here. If we have 3-4 houses on this block that vehicles ran into them. And the other question that I have is blind point was mentioned, visibility issues. Did we look at that? It looked like a
pretty
shot.
straight
Yes.
street. I'm not sure if it could be a driveway or a
Maybe red curb approaching the driveway.
that could be
That's an issue, maybe. Okay. You can't even get out of your driveway, yeah? Have we received any petitions from Encinal Avenue, which is 1 block south of Altura, regarding speed humps? Because I can guarantee you we might as well approve speed humps for Encinal right now. Because we're going to shift that traffic southerly. There's no ifs and buts about it.
I think what happens is that traffic will shift. It's a little bit characteristic of the
Another question, Jano, that I have is, I'm assuming we haven't had any instances where we've installed stop signs, then the number of accidents went up, and we were forced to remove them. Have we had that situation before?
No, obviously we have stop control at both ends of
There is
Altura.
stop controls, but it's a set of four humps, so you're looking at $12,000 installation and removal. Then you're looking at $24,000.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we were to install them, unless there is an issue, we would remove them. The reason to remove them.
Okay.
The speed lumps, because that has been a concern also. Our observations of speed lumps is that there is about a 10% of people with larger wheelbases, mostly large trucks, that if there's no oncoming vehicles, they may try to get in between the two openings, try to bypass them. That's been the case that we've observed. Most of the passenger cars, maybe they try to put one tire through the opening, and then you still end up going over them. So in terms of what is possible on primary response route that the fire department wants us to keep them clear of any traffic calming measures, that was the best compromise that we've come up with, and it's becoming a lot more popular in many streets, where actually many cities that they use more of the prefab, the rubberized type of speed lumps, where they put them in the same way, but they're rubberized and they provide the same function.
I was just going to mention briefly that an example of that is on Broadview, just south of the Montrose Shopping Park. That section of the street basically has speed lumps. And maybe I shouldn't admit this because I do own a large wheelbase pickup truck. But yeah, it is possible to, if you're driving a large truck. Yeah. But the thing of it is, you're going straight down the middle of the street. You're straddling the dotted line. And so obviously if there's any incoming traffic, it's not a feasible thing. And realistically speaking, even if it's 3 in the morning and there's nobody on the street, you still shouldn't be doing that anyway.
It is a violation, and our police department, giving that concern when we start installing the speed lumps, try to see if we can get them to be out there. And again, it's one of those things, when you're out there you don't see them, but the residents who are there see them. But overall, we've looked at it. There's a 10%. Mostly of people who would try to do that, straddle the center, and that's really only when there's no oncoming vehicles coming. Sure. So if they get close to that speed hump, they straddle, come back, and then go to the next one, and if there's no cars coming in. But that is one of the deficiencies of that.
People will do that. I can testify my son got a ticket a few years ago doing just that.
My concern, again, is I think the type of people driving the street, the behavior is unusual, honestly. I mean, how many streets we have in Glendale that's a straight shot and you see vehicles running into houses left and right? There's no visibility problem. So it's a little more than that. And honestly, I mean, speed humps, if you don't slow down, they could cause a problem. You hit that hump at a certain speed, then your vehicle will be launched up in the air. That's another concern of mine. And I don't want to jump the gun. Maybe we should do further studies before we install them. I'm inclined to approve it, and I heard everybody, but I hate to approve them and create a bigger problem down the line. And have that on my conscience. Maybe we should have a town hall meeting. Maybe we should have blinking orange signs that says slow down. Like I said, it's a tough one.
Why was it okay on the Louise? We have a school and children. Yeah.
Well, because Louise Street, we didn't hear from anybody that vehicles are flying into homes. This is a picture that you sent us, right? I didn't see this on Louise. And how many other people came up and talked about vehicles running into their houses? I didn't see that. I didn't hear that. I heard it about Altera.
With all due respect, it seems like the rationale is because we have a great problem there.
Yeah.
No, we should do something about it. Don't get me wrong. We should do something about it. But I don't think that. The other thing is that Louise, we're considering bumps, not lumps. We're doing lumps in this case. I'm a transportation engineer. I'm not just a commissioner, and I'm a banker or an attorney, with all due respect. This is what I do for a living. There's a big difference between lumps and bumps. That 10% could create a big problem. Could create a big problem. And I want to be very careful approving this and want to discuss this. I mean, beat it to death before we approve it. And the other issue also is we're shifting it down to another street, Sentinel Avenue. Now we're going to have vehicles running into those houses. I don't know. I'm a little. This is a tough one, like I said. And I look at staff maybe to give us a little bit more guidance and information on it before we make a decision. I'd like to hear you also.
I agree with many of the points Commissioner Sahakian made. My feeling on this is I'm in complete support of it. I had the opportunity to go down there to Altera, and it was 8:10 in the morning, and I saw parents walking their children, a beautiful scene, a sacred scene that I think should be preserved. And I had the chance to pull over and speak with a resident of, not of Altera, but she lives nearby, and she walks down Altera to get to Lincoln. And her name is Rebecca Hillquist. She was walking her little girl to school today. And as I was talking to her, there was 2 vehicles that we stopped our conversation because we were unsure what the noise was, the speed was. We had to look around. And I just think that's telling. If I'm only there for 20 minutes on just a random moment in time in the morning, to me that shook me. I didn't like that feeling I had. I didn't like that feeling of fear. And I don't think that the residents on the street should have to be living in this tangible, and it is a tangible, as we see in the photos, fear of their life and of their children's safety. I, for one, believe that signs are good, but I also believe that a mother walking a child with a backpack walking down the street is a walking sign. It's a walking sign to those drivers that it's time to slow down, and that's free. In addition, my opinion on this comes from a personal experience I had, where I was parked in my car outside my children's school, not too far away from Altera, at the Shamlian Armenian School on Lowell, and I was parked uphill, and a speeding vehicle, I was parked in my car, going 45 miles an hour, as the police officer noted, slammed into my car as I was in the car, and if I didn't have my seatbelt, I would have been through the windshield. And so I firsthand know what it's like to want to have a feeling of safety parked outside my children's school and have this happen. So I'm very sensitive to maintaining a feeling as best possible of control. I know there's no perfect thing that can be done, as previously mentioned, but whatever that can be done, because of the proximity to the school, because of the history of tragedy that struck that street, I think that it's something that needs to be done.
Johnny, you want to chime in on anything?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, there's no question we do have a speeding problem in the city, and like any other, I'll be surprised if there's any city that doesn't have this same problem. Just this weekend, I was in Berkeley with officials from City of Berkeley, and I don't know if you want to look at what they've done in Berkeley with diverters, with traffic circles, with speed humps, bumps, lumps, you name them, they have them. And it's every block. I'm not kidding. It's every block, every other block has it, because it's gotten to a point where, yes, it is true that once you start it mushrooms, or you end up putting it in other residential streets in order to control the speed. In case of Altera, I think there's no question it's probably one of the worst streets in town in terms of the volume and in terms of the speed. There are a few that also reach that 39 mile per hour speed, and it is very, very high, and it's definitely because people are trying to avoid Foothill Boulevard, they're trying to shortcut there. The issue about the emergency response is that's the desire of the fire department. I mean, there is a balance to be reached. The discussion from the traffic engineer standpoint is that when you have a speeding problem, it's 24 hours a day, and in case of an emergency, it could happen, God forbid, once a month or once every year, where you're actually trying to respond to an emergency, and then you would have to go over these humps or bumps, and then you're delayed. So, like Mr. Sahagan, who's a traffic engineer, I'm a traffic engineer, my preference is to put in speed humps instead of lumps, because then it takes away that issue about people straggling, and it could have an impact. So, you could consider speed humps in this case. Again, I'm giving you the option if that is something that you want to do. Again, the fire department, like staff, gives us their professional opinion, and we're giving you that professional opinion. Speed humps are more effective than speed lumps because, again, people are trying to avoid the hump and they try to go into those openings, specifically larger vehicles. So in case of Altura, you could consider a speed humps in lieu of a speed lump, if that is one of your concerns.
You can do that with no further input from the fire department?
No, I mean, we've given them option. Let me put it this way. They are against any kind of traffic calming measure because at the end of the day, if, for example, a vehicle is oncoming in the opposite direction, that speed lump design doesn't work for them because now they actually have to go over them on the right side of the street. Unless, because of their sirens, people start pulling over. And if they're not paying attention, if there's cars parked on both sides of the street, the effectiveness of what we design goes away technically. So it all depends on the time of the day and at the point where they're responding to an emergency, that if there's nobody else there and they can go straight right in the center is when it will reduce them. But still, because if it's a hook and ladder, if it's a large vehicle, they have to aim to make sure, although they're very, very good professional drivers, it still slows them down. If it's not 10 seconds, but it's 3-4 seconds. In general, they still slow down. That's what their thing is. So that is one option you have if you want to go that route and not put in the lumps and put in the speed humps. I do also advise you that, yes, there's a good potential that in Sinol Avenue, if this occurs and people find that now they don't want to drive that street, potentially like what you saw in the Mountain Rossman area, that street could be considered for a speed hump as well. Again, the idea would be to send the traffic up to Foothill or keep them on the freeway. Signs, flashers, you name it, we've done it. We're doing it. We're putting stop signs somewhere in locations. Then people start running the stop signs. They're not effective. So truly, as much as everybody hates them, they're very effective, and we haven't taken one out once we install them. I'm sure after a while people don't, get used to them, that they know that they're there and they're going to have to slow down. But on the average, you will slow down the traffic. Effectively, you should reduce the potential of those accidents that are happening today or have happened in the past. So my recommendation to you could consider the speed humps. And the humps, again, is something that fire doesn't like. I mean, in general, the preference is lumps, but that is a consideration when you look at the community and the effectiveness of each one.
And Mr. Chair, I have a lot of friends that are firefighters that drive these big vehicles. More than the speed, honestly, they've told me, is those lumps are very hard on those $100,000 trucks. The suspension system is not very comfortable. And it causes damage if you keep driving them on lumps. So that's the main reason. But as far as slowing down, yes, there is 5 to 10 seconds difference in that. Because Altura is a very high speed, it's very high volume, I think we should consider it as a special case where we should push for speed humps instead of speed lumps. And I'm ready to move this item to approve it, considering speed humps.
As speed humps. Does anyone have any specific comment about that amendment?
I think we should leave it speed lumps. 10% max are the offenders. I don't think that's enough to to slow down fire and police response.
Mr. Chair, if I may again, so that you're clear, effectiveness of humps is more than lumps. However, again, we designed the lumps because of the fire department's concern on fire emergency primary response route, because Altera is one of those. And as I said, they rather not see anything. And sometimes we just almost have to twist their arms and say, look at these speeds that are happening every day. We've had accidents here. So under that consideration, their position was, okay, we'll go along with the lumps. So that's their preference, although they don't like them. So that you have the two fire department's preference would be, if you're going to install them, put in lumps. Although there is a potential of, violations.
Mr. Chairman, there was one more person who wanted to speak on this issue. If the matter hasn't been closed for public comments, could we allow one more person to speak?
I don't have a speaker card for it.
Person wanted to bring a speaker card right now, since the matter is still on the
with the vote. Fine. We'll reopen the public hearing, but card, fast, please. Well, just go ahead and make your comments, give your name, and then fill out a card and get it to us.
My name is Jerry Childs. I'm at 3511 Altera. Thank you for your indulgence. I didn't plan to speak. That's why I didn't fill out a card. I agreed with the slowdown because of the school and all the traffic we have on there and the speed which you're traveling. But I just want to make a couple of comments. I've been there since 1975.
Did you state your name for the record, sir?
Jerry Childs.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes. I've been there since 1975, and the city of Glendale wanted Altera to be a major cross street to carry a lot of traffic. They planned it this way. I offered a piece of my land to make a cul-de-sac instead of putting in a wider bridge. They denied that because they wanted all this traffic to go there. Now we've got all this traffic. And I hear you, sir, tell that if the speed bumps are a problem weaving in and out, they'll come and police us. Why aren't they policing us now? Why aren't they doing this now? Why aren't we doing some of this stuff now? Why haven't we had more talk about this whole situation now, before you're ready to do it? I'm just upset about that. And I'm gonna live with the bumps because we need to stop the traffic. Don't get me wrong. I'm with everybody that wants this to stop. I just think it's just kind of slammed into us here. That one bump is right outside our bedroom. I'll have to live with it. And that's okay if it keeps our kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question for Mr. Bagdanian. What's the possibility of once converting, if you put the lumps and then converting it? Is there such an option?
It can be very difficult. They all rolled at the same time, and you have to get a parabolic cross section of it. So just putting them in and then try to come in and patch it up. Usually, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. So I think in consideration of we ask fire's input, it's again a balancing issue. Is you do reduce the emergency response time if they're not even responding on Altera, but they're going beyond that. That's where that would slow them down. But there's a potential people who straddle the center. That is an issue that can happen, and it only happens technically if there's opposing traffic. There's no opposing traffic, and that's the case. So those are the factors to be considered. It's not perfect. Unfortunately, the solution we have is not perfect, but our experience is the lumps or the humps have been effective in terms of reducing the speed between 5 to 8 miles in some areas and only 5 miles an hour in other areas. Also, for your information, the next street down is a narrower street, and generally speaking, narrow street discourage people to try to shortcut. So possibly maybe not as much traffic will shift down from Altera if we install the lumps, but it could be that you will have to consider that in the future sometime if those residents start complaining about the speed.
You're being fairly flexible, I guess, on lumps versus bumps. Humps on this one, would you make that same... has that same tone for all other streets that have lumps?
My only thing in this case is Tommy reminded me that there are locations that, it's a primary response route on the fires. Altera is on the fire's primary response route. So even though, they may not, as I said, they don't like it at all, even though they said, okay, fine, we'll live with it, that was not what their preference was when we approached them. So the lumps is their preferred option overall, although Commissioner Sahakian is right that given the speeds there, you have that potential that at a higher speed, the lumps could create some problem if somebody is straddling the center. But on the other hand, we don't know what happens. Once we put them in, we will see that the speeds will go down. And I will definitely think that you will have a good percentage of the shortcutters that are using Altera, they will not use Altera again. They will shift down, they go up to use New York or Dunsmore to go up further north to Foothill Boulevard. So, there's those options that you can consider.
Well, as a traffic engineer, would you say it's 50-50, whether it's lumps or humps, or do you sort of have a lean toward a preference, given the fire?
In terms of our research and our experience, the speed humps are more effective.
But I'm not. But in this situation,
I think in this situation, given the speed and the considerations of fire response route, I would keep it as speed lumps.
Speed lumps.
Lumps, yes.
Bill, what's your view on this?
I just wanted to ask, the closest fire station, is that fire station 28 on New York, north of Lincoln? Okay.
Yes.
Because
I don't know their number, but the 28 is another fire station.
Because what I'm wondering of is sort of the geography of when the fire engines have to respond from that station. I'm kind of wondering, why they would where they would be going to if they took Altera. It seems to me that for a lot of their coverage area, they would either go north up to Foothill or south to Honolulu. They do take Altera?
Right street.
Okay. Yes.
They don't come down. I've been like, I'm sorry. They don't do a lot. They don't come down our side much. They come down the hill, turn, they either go straight down, or they turn and go past the school fortune.
Mr. Chair, if I may, you read my mind, absolutely. And to Commissioner Fuad, this is no different than the speed humps that are on Mountain between Viscano and all the way to Royal. Council approved humps, although Mountain is a primary response route. They said no to lumps. The reason? Too many kids, too many families walking Nibley Park. And this is the same type of situation. I don't think we will find too many streets in Glendale, residential streets, that have a severe problem such as this one with a very high speeding problem. It's not a joke. 85 percentile is at 39 miles per hour. Not only that, I honestly believe that the behavior of the people that are driving Altura Avenue is different than your regular motorists because of hitting houses, hitting vehicles. You don't find too many of those either. Again, I repeat, there's no visibility problems. It's a straight shot. And I go back to what you said, Commissioner, is, and I wish we had a bigger map, and the fire department, I love them to death. But I think this is one situation where we should consider bumps and not lumps, honestly, because those drivers that are flying into houses will use the lumps, the openings, to basically weave left and right. I honestly believe that.
I'm trying to find, rather than just jump to humps all the time, I'm trying to, why does this qualify, despite the police department, who I prefer not to second guess, why is this good for humps and not lumps?
I think
you're saying it's the speed.
It's the speed and it's the behavior of these drivers. I think they're vigilantes, honestly, the way they drive. I mean, Altura. I was there. I think you will see 55 miles per hour. You will see that easily.
Mr. Chairman, just for the in reference to fire department as to why are they using Altura, fire department has looked at the entire city, and they came up with primary, secondary response routes. So even though Foothill Boulevard, for example, is one of their major ones, New York, Dunsmore are there on their list, they also look at some continuous streets that are east-west as an alternative. So obviously Prospect is to the north and it's cul-de-sac, so they're not going to look at that. So not necessarily, they're going from the fire department one block up to turn left and then go into Altura, but it's just mostly they look at an entire stretch and see which one of these streets is wider than the other streets, so that if we have to respond to something and it's in that neck of the woods, they will go directly in that, rather than go up 2-4 blocks to the left and then try to come down. That's the only reason. So Altura is on their list. Whether or not at ever coming out of the fire station they'll come up and make a left turn on Altura and then use Altura, that all depends on the situation. So that's really the logic behind it. Otherwise, you may not have them actually drive on that street at all.
You have more?
It's not up, it's
Down. Down. Down.
What's, Commissioner Yakubian, what's your opinion of the lumps versus humps?
I believe that gosh, it's a tough one. I think everything Commissioner Sahakian brought up is, I really respect what he has to say about this, coming from his, rich background in this area. However, I feel like we need to give deference to the opinion of the fire department, and I don't want to see any jeopardy to any resident from emergency response. If I'm weighing it, if some violator's car is going to go flying in the air because he's taking that, too fast or not, I feel that, that's, it's going to be outweighed by the fact that, the emergency services should have preference. Again, what he said is haunting. It's sticking, in my brain that is definitely a possibility. Maybe even a probability. But I think I'm leaning more with the lumps, just because I don't want to overstep, the opinions of the fire department on emergency routes. I think that's the catch for me, is that this is a route that they, have highlighted.
Well, personally, I'm leaning more towards the humps, actually, because I'm just picturing you're right. There's something happening with these people. It's a nice, wide, straight street, so they're careening down it at high speed, and if they're trying to straddle it, and if their cars, those gaps are sized for trucks, not for vehicles. They're specifically not the size of vehicles. So a car, if they think that they're going to hit it right, they hit, one tire goes through, the other tire hits an angle. It's going, and if they're going at a high enough speed, they could get spun out, they could go flying, they could do. You have no control over what happens in those situations, and that's what causes me concern. That Commissioner Sahakian was talking about.
That's just anticipating or trying to predict driver behavior in that area. It's partially a guessing game. That could possibly happen. It's true.
And again, Mr. Chair, I remind everybody on the Commission, Council wanted humps on mountain and not lumps, and believe me, there are far more emergency response vehicles using mountain than Altura.
So we've got 2 lumps, 2 humps, Bill.
Oh my God, I'm the swing vote. Oh boy.
You're going to get something.
Well, I'm also mindful of the issues that have been brought up with lumping, and I think it probably comes down to a slight edge, in my opinion, to having humps instead of lumps. I do believe that you are right that there is something more going on here, and while at the same time being mindful of the requirements of the fire department. And again, it would be nice if we had a bigger map. But the question I'm asking myself is, let's say for the sake of argument that there were humps there, and that would therefore slow down the fire department if they were going to use Altura. And I find myself asking, are there other alternates for that they could use to get to emergencies, that are all throughout the area? If there was something over on the other side of Dunsmore, or something on the Highway Highlands Avenue that was relatively close to Station 28, I could see where taking Altura might be the most direct route to get there. but that's a fairly small percentage of the coverage area of that fire station. And it is a very tough decision, and it is kind of a fine line, but I'm kind of leaning in the direction that my colleagues have indicated, because I do believe that there is more going on here that we're not necessarily going to address just through traffic calming. But if we are going to do traffic calming, I think we kind of need to take away that loophole, that the few crazy speeders might want to take advantage of by straddling the lumps. And I'm very reluctant to go that way, especially after listening to Mr. Mitchell, and I believe he said that the lumps were tolerable, but the bumps were terrible. I hear ya, and it's not an easy decision for me, but that's where I'm leaning right now.
And I guess I think I'm being convinced for Humps now, given the width of the street, the kind of drivers, and they probably would use the loophole, if you will. So,
I mean, if someone from the fire department were to come back to us and say, no, this is a horrible tragedy, it's going to, affect our ability to, provide service and save lives and all that, I would certainly reconsider.
Well, they can appeal it, right, to council?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. They've already looked at this, and as I said, if I wear my traffic engineer's hat, as I said earlier, the speed humps are more effective, and it takes away that issue about trying to go to the center. We've been respectful of the fire department, so we try to work with them on these cases. And if this was another street, maybe there wasn't any other alternative, then I would strongly recommend against what the commission is considering. But I feel comfortable. I think you're looking at all the different issues which relates to this, and the speeds are very, very high. So I think I don't, feel uncomfortable with your decision from a traffic engineer standpoint, and I don't think the fire department will have an issue with it. I mean, having you consider their concerns, you're making a decision based on all the factors. So that's why you get the big bucks. So.
Well, just to ask Mr. Bogdan, so if humps are approved, what recourse? I mean, does the fire department? We're going on based what you've said, but again. As one of the commissioners stated, we don't have the fire department here to give us that, their angle, in a palpable way. So I guess the question is, if it is approved, the humps, is there an opportunity, if somehow this does not sit well at all with them, and they, what is a recourse?
If there is an issue, within our departments or fire departments, we don't appeal this to council. We will bring it back to the commission and say, now, after all this, if they seriously have a concern and they really don't want this to happen, or they want to have a say in it, I will, after this commission action, I will certainly discuss it with them, and if there's any issue, I'll be happy to bring it back to the commission and inform the residents that, worst case could happen. Let's say we bring it back to the commission and we go with the lumps, because they already are agreeable to the lumps. This is the worst case can happen, that if they seriously have a problem with the speed humps, then we will bring it back to the commission and say, let's change your decision to speed lumps. That would be something you would consider.
Yeah, okay, fellow commissioners, and with that being said, that being my main concern, is I do want the fire department to, really speak their mind if they feel that the humps are inappropriate. I don't know what their needs are. I'm not quite sure how they're responding and what, but when they say it's an emergency route, I give deference to what they say. So if this is something that they sit well with, they're okay with it, or if they have to come back with it, I'll leave that to them. But I'll be okay then voting on humps with the condition that,
Mr. Chair, one more comment that might make you feel a little better, Commissioner Yakubian. It's an exception. That's how I look at it. Honestly, I look at it as it's a special a street that we're dealing with. We're not going to see this all over Glendale. We're not. And I go back to what Mr. Bagdanian said, that these fire trucks will still have to slow down. The speed limit is 25-mile-an-hour prima facie speed limit. You're not going to see them going 35 miles per hour to make their destination using Altera. They're not going to do that. They're still going to probably go 25 miles per hour, and even at that speed, those large trucks, again, go back to what Jano said, you need to line them up to shoot the lumps, basically.
Right.
So it's not as easy. So I think the delay, honestly, is minimal. It's 5 to 10 seconds. It takes 40 seconds to get out of the fire truck and get your equipment ready. It's a residential street. Okay, it's not a collector, it's not a secondary highway. Otherwise, I would have had a different opinion on it. And again, Mountain, it has over 7,000 vehicles per day. Over 5,000 vehicles per day. Mountain, we're looking at 1,200 here. And council wanted bumps and not lumps on Mountain. That's huge.
Okay, so would you like to make the amended motion,
yes,
please?
with the, I look at the city attorney, we can make that adjustment to the motion to approve it with the understanding that it's humps and not lumps. Okay, then I move, what was the item number? I have paper, 5B1. 5B1.
As amended.
As amended, humps versus lumps.
Before humps instead of lumps.
Yes.
Be installed.
Yes.
Can somebody second that, please?
Second.
Okay. Let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Fuad,
Aye.
Commissioner Sahakian,
Aye.
Commissioner Yakubian,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiseman,
Yes.
Chairperson Welch.
Yes. Next item, please.
At 5C is report regarding installation of speed humps on Elk Avenue between Everett Street and Adams Street. At 5C1 is motion recommending installation of 3 speed humps on Elk Avenue between Everett Street and Adams Street.
Okay, thank you.
My last presentation is on speed humps on East Elk Avenue between Everett Street and Adams Street. In September 2009, staff received a request to install speed humps on Elk Avenue because of excessive speeding and cut-through traffic. The residents stated that people were using Elk Avenue instead of going on Colorado Street or Lomita. As shown in this aerial, there's a nearby park at the corner of Everett and Elk. Residents stated that people use Elk as a shortcut to avoid the traffic on Colorado. Staff conducted an engineering study of Elk. The results are shown on this table. Just like the other 2 locations, the 85th percentile speed is 31 miles per hour. The daily volume is 1,148 cars per day. This isn't a primary emergency response route, so we can consider speed humps. The resident got 83% of the property owners or tenants to sign the petition. So based on these findings, staff recommends that TPC approve the installation of 3 speed humps on East Elk Avenue between Everett Street and Adams Street.
Are there any other speed humps in that general vicinity?
No.
No, that's the only area. One thing is, Jen, one of the reasons Elk is a problem also is truly during the holidays when the Galleria traffic picks up and now with the Americana. Unfortunately, we're starting to get complaints from streets that are to the north and south. Even if it's for 2-3 blocks from the back up from the intersections, people drive down 1 or 2 block, shortcut across to go past if they're trying to go towards Central or Brand or Adams in this case. So that is becoming more and more of a problem. 1 block to the north and 1 block to the south of our major arterials, in this case Colorado.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, I'll open the public hearing. I have 1 speaker card, Alan Pell.
Good evening. My name is Alan Pell. I live at 829.5 East Elk. I've been a resident of Elk Street for over 20 years. I had the opportunity to circulate a petition with my neighbor Jeanette. I was very impressed with the overwhelming support, the overwhelming positive comments and desire that my neighbors and friends to have speed humps. I've learned a lot about speed humps and speed lumps this evening. Overwhelming support. As you know, Colorado Boulevard is one block north of us. We have a lot of traffic coming up Adams, a major north-south street in our city. People hit the red light on Colorado. They make a right-hand turn on our street to avoid that traffic backlog. They come down to Everett, turn north, and then back to Colorado. As you know, there's Elk Street Park, which is on the corner of Everett and Elk Street. There's a lot of kids in that neighborhood. I happen to be a school teacher, and as an educator for the last 20 years, I'm very concerned about the kids that live in my neighborhood, the parents of the families. I do see a lot of people speeding down Elk Street. I've witnessed one-car accidents on numerous occasions. In the last 2 months, we had a car crash into parked cars on Elk Street. I've personally seen cars come up onto the sidewalk, crash into the parking signs. I've heard and seen cars speeding all throughout the day. There are a lot of nightclubs on I think it's the 900 block of Colorado. There happens to be 3 nightclubs and a bar. They have a lot of late night traffic. People come 1 block south from Colorado to park their cars. There's a lot of traffic at night. There's a lot of traffic during rush hour in the morning and in the afternoon. I have grave concerns. Having a park at one end of the street, having people driving too fast down our street. I've been to different parts of Glendale, and I've driven down streets that have speed bumps. And it's human nature, you just slow down. You see the speed bump. I drive a pickup truck, I still slow down. Most of the cars I see on Elk Street that are speeding are sedans. The sedans are a little bit lower. They don't like to go over speed bumps at high speed. I drive a pickup truck, I see a speed bump, I slow down. It's human nature. And I think that if we had speed humps on our street, that would be an effective way of controlling the traffic and the speeding. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you. I'll also note for the record that there were 7 other submissions of comments, all of which were in favor regarding the Elk Street petition. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing. Comments? Who wants to jump?
I understand that
That is correct, 83%. That's what it says.
Is that accurate?
Try for the audience if the gentleman can come to the podium to speak so that we can capture their voice, otherwise we won't. The petition was been signed.
Yes.
That we verified has 83%. Now, if we get letters of support for or against it when we send out the notices to the residents notifying about the commission meeting, we encourage them, if they can't come, they can send a letter in support or against it. We're not necessarily counting yes or no's as on above or beyond the 83%. Right now, the official petition is 83%, which meets the requirement. Anything above that, that's okay. But there might be some residents that you were not able to discuss it with, maybe, and they send a letter of support.
And the requirement is 75%, so you're well.
83%.
83% is what your petition indicated. 75% is the minimum that we require.
All right, thank you.
So you met that requirement.
Okay, so.
Well, I'll start. Again, I had some time. So no laughing, fellow commissioners. I was out there and was speaking with the postal carrier on Elk Avenue. And when I explained to him that we were considering this motion tonight, he said, which made me a little scared, "Are you sure you're not talking about Lomita?" Because in his carrying of the mail, he says that Lomita is the one that is just... they're both, he said Elk is bad, but Lomita really has a big problem too. So with that being said, I came to this meeting tonight with that big black cloud that looms over all of us when we're trying to make these lump decisions, is what kind of a Pandora's box are we opening tonight in which area of Glendale? But I did see, and I saw with my eyes, the excessive rate of speed the apartment buildings there, all of the residents. It's definitely a shortcut for vehicles. So I am inclined to support the traffic calming measures, and I don't know, Mr. Baghdanian, do we have anything in the pipe for Lomita?
No, Commissioner Yakubian, we don't. We did state in the staff report in general, when we know there is a parallel street like Lomita, yes, there is a potential, and if you were to, I'm sure, go out there and survey the residents, and we send them a petition saying, okay, go ahead, sign it, I'm sure you'll get a good response that, they want speed humps. So for this reason, it's a, like you mentioned, it's a Pandora's box. I mean, if there are many streets in the city that if somebody were to take their time, go through the motions, they could get a consensus about the residents that they have a speeding problem, we will count it and this will happen. We don't go out there and seek that unless we, up front, we know that there is a possibility. I mean, we already have counted those other streets and say both streets should be considered, not just one. In that case, we send out letters ourselves to the other residents as well. So, if you want to consider some kind of a traffic calming, or we meet with the residents and discuss it. Right now, there's nothing on Lomita, and if the residents come and complain about it, then obviously we have to consider it. On Lomita between Glendale Avenue and Adams, Tommy mentions to me that the petition has been issued. They've contacted us, but they have not returned the petition with their signatures. So that is in the mail if we get one.
Right. Okay.
And it's been about 2 months since we issued the petition for them.
Next. Bill, you want to go?
Again, when I see all the conditions are satisfied, as has been stated, unless there's some, compelling reason or we have, some other things to consider, I'm inclined to support this as well.
Mr. Chair, I'm also inclined to support it, but at some point what I'd like to see is similar to the preferential parking approach that this commission took, to take a look at a bigger area and see what type of calming that area needs. Because, no doubt we're shifting the problem from one street to the other the other. It's going to get probably to a point that the city will need a budget of $1 million for speed humps annually. And if we have the money, that's absolutely fine. I just think that we need a better approach, honestly. The solution, it's been proved, definitely it'll decrease speed, no ifs and buts about it. It does help. Fortunately and unfortunately, it does help. So I will be voting yes for it.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with that, but it's still, the marginal cases like this just concern me greatly because it's just barely above the minimums, and all we're doing is shifting around and increasing traffic loads on adjacent streets, and where does it end? So I would fully support something like a more long-range plan or a special committee that we establish perhaps to reevaluate the methodology behind granting traffic calming measures with a more holistic approach, looking at the entire areas that might be affected. So just food for thought.
Mr. Chair, one more note to staff. Lomita is wider than Elk Avenue, I believe. It looked like it, at least when I drove it. And also at Everett, you don't have a stop sign. It's a T intersection. Obviously, you don't need one. But it's definitely
Everett
yes, Everett and Lomita. It's a T. It's a longer stretch. It's a little wider. So I will guarantee that Lomita will be coming to us soon.
Commissioner, you had any comments to add?
Well, I think I agree with the regional approach, but that shouldn't hold up these residents' petition.
Correct.
So let's move forward with this. Maybe, as you suggest, maybe some thought on maybe doing traffic counts, at least on neighboring streets, some thoughts. But but one thing at a time. So
Adding
let's
that
do
to
this.
the methodology and determining this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to overburden the system so nothing gets done effectively, but it certainly should be considered. But let's move forward on Elk, I would suggest.
Okay, so is that a motion? Are you moving?
I move that we approve the Elk Street speed humps.
I second that.
Okay, so we have motion and seconded on 5C1. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Fuad,
Yes.
Commissioner Sahakian,
Yes.
Commissioner Yakubian,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiseman,
Yes.
Chairperson Welch.
Yes. Did you have something to add, sir?
Yes, I did. You were speaking about a holistic approach. I just wanted to let you know that since I've lived on Elk Street, the corner of Everett and Adams has gone from a two-way stop to a four-way stop. And I agree with what you're saying about looking at the whole pattern of traffic in the neighborhood. I appreciate the decision that you've made here, but maybe the issue with Lomita, maybe that should be investigated. Maybe more studies necessary. I appreciate the problems that people on Lomita are going to have, and thank you again for your time.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, next item, please. Item 6.
Item 6 is public hearing. Item 6A is report regarding application by Prime Med Inc. for an owner's permit to operate non-emergency medical transportation services in the city of Glendale. At 6A1 is motion to approve the application for an owner's permit to operate 6 non-emergency medical vehicles in Glendale by Prime Med Inc. At 6A2 is motion to deny the application for an owner's permit to operate 6 non-emergency medical vehicles in Glendale by Prime Med Inc.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Transportation Parking Commission, the application by Prime Med Inc. for an owner's permit to operate non-emergency vehicle services in Glendale was considered by the Commission at the last meeting, and the Commission took action based on staff recommendation to grant them one permit at a time. However, the applicant was present and requested that this issue that they be heard, although we've already taken action on the item. After a brief discussion, Commission agreed that to postpone that decision or continue hearing this item to the next Commission meeting, which is tonight.
This is the one we rescinded, right?
Yes, that's the one you rescinded, and allow staff to meet with the applicant and get a lot more information that we were lacking at the time when they applied. So essentially, what is going on is many of those issues that were unclear to us at the last, before we submitted this application for Commission's consideration, we have been able to meet with the applicant and the 2 other Alpha Trans and Star Medical. There are 2 other companies that they're acquiring to make sure that all the information is provided. So essentially what the applicant Primate is doing is they're acquiring 2 other companies, Alpha Trans and the Star Medical, and basically they're going to get their client base so that they can operate in Glendale. They're buying their vehicles as well. 6 vehicles they're purchasing from these 2 companies. And essentially what they've provided to us is a copy of their agreement for the acquisition of the company. In other words, Primate is buying both companies. We've asked city attorney to look at it and make sure if it's okay, and they've said that the acquisition document is okay, that they're purchasing the vehicle, the companies. And essentially to make sure that once Primate takes over, that client base that they're claiming that they will have is there, and their providers that they're providing their services, medical providers, are going to use Primate. We drafted a letter and we sent it to each one of those providers and requested that if they would be using Primate now that the company is being sold, let's say Alpha Trans is sold to Primate, and we verified that, and they responded in writing that these company, they are going to continue using Primate instead of Alpha Trans or Star Medical. So essentially, they total together, they have owner's permit, the 2 companies, Alpha Trans and Star Medical. They have a total of 8 permits to operate 8 non-emergency vehicles. Primate is asking for 6 permits for 6 vehicles only. And in addition, they are going. The manager of Alpha Trans the owner of Alpha Trans was selling their company to PrimeMed, will become the operating manager of PrimeMed, so they will be managing the services as well. So looking at that, that they will have their client base, and if they take over the accounts from these two companies, essentially they have met the need and necessity requirement that there is a need for these. There's already an existing client base, and staff is recommending that the commission consider an owner's permit to operate 6 vehicles by PrimeMed based on the fact that they're acquiring the other 2 companies. This is different than what we have recommended the commission has considered in the past. If it's a new company, that we give them only 1 permit to operate. But we have been able to verify that they have a client base, that once they take over, they should be able to continue with the clients that they were being served by Alpha Trans and by Star Medical. So with that, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we're recommending that you approve owner's permit for 6 vehicles, and there's a motion for your consideration. It's a change of ownership, but our code does not allow that once you buy a company, you cannot have the permit, so they're non-transferable, so therefore they have to come to the commission and seek that. That's correct.
I think this is probably a question for the lawyer here. Should we not make it a condition of the approval that it's subject to the acquisition actually happening? Because I didn't actually see a condition of that in the motion.
I believe they've already done the acquisition has already occurred based on what we have seen in the document.
It has already occurred.
That has occurred. In terms of we will see this when we actually see the vehicles. We will see this when we actually see their insurance certificate that has been issued to PrimeMed. And once you approve that, only thing that they're getting is approval from the commission. Then this goes to the city clerk's office, and once they bring in their vehicles to license, once they provide their insurance certificate in the name of PrimeMed, is when the actual owners, the permits are issued to the vehicles. We also have to check their drivers, background check on the drivers. All of those things have to occur before they will get it. So you'll see that they'll get all that. Now, in 6 months or a year or 2 years, if they don't do a good job and they lose those accounts, or that's something that we will see in the future when they come back. That's why they're asking for 6 only, although they could have asked for 8. Okay. They can come back after they're more established, and they'll add 2 more or as many as they wish, and if the commission approves it.
I had a question for you, maybe also for the city attorney. Once, if it's approved, Alpha Trans, it has permits that are expiring on the 13th. Does that all get rescinded at the same time? I'm a little concerned about liability and any issue of an outstanding license to drive a vehicle around under the name Alpha Trans.
We will, if they don't renew their permits, we will revoke their permits. In other words, they're July 1.
Well, that's for DBA.
Right. Well, July 1 to August 1 is the window.
Okay.
So technically, they had essentially they had, let's say if they had 6, they only renewed 2 of them. Mm-hmm. Because anticipating they're going to go through these acquisitions, so they did not renew it. And Alpha Trans will dissolve as a result of this acquisition.
Okay.
So we will make sure that Alpha Trans doesn't have permits at the same time.
At the same time. Okay, that was my question.
No, we will. City clerks will make sure. Yes, keep in mind that the Alpha Trans is, these companies operate in multiple cities. So even though that they have 2 permits in Glendale, they have additional permits in other cities. So their company still is operating, still providing services. And to further answer your question, both of the applicant and the other owners are here. So there might be a lapse in their operations for a period of time. That's why they've been trying to rush and get these permits approval through the city so that they can maintain that level of service that they had before by Alpha Trans and by Star Medical.
My question would be, if you have the need and necessity, you have somewhat contracts with these hospitals, dialysis centers that you're providing, and you had 6 permits, why wouldn't you renew all 6 and you renew only 2, although, you're selling the company? It raised a question in my mind.
We asked the same question, and they were in the process of they anticipated that they'll get their permit in July, immediately in August. So that's why it's taken longer. We asked a lot of questions, as you know, until we got to this point. So that's why that they didn't get all their permits squared away before they had all 6 of them. They were in the process of acquiring the other company, so the other company says, well, now I have to pay for the permits. I have to pay for the insurance and everything.
Right.
So, and at the same time, I'm selling the company to Primate. So that was the reason they were given to us, that they didn't license all of them and then transfer.
Okay, as long as staff looked into it.
Yes, we did.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
My only observation would be just to verify, and I think following on what Commissioner Yakubian said, that this is indeed a full-on acquisition, lock, stock, and barrel. It's not just an asset purchase. And so the Alpha Trans and Star Medical corporate entities will go away. And,
as they're operating Glendale.
And PrimeMed will be the successor with the assets and everything else. Okay.
Okay, so let's open the public hearing. I have 3 speaker cards. Edward Sarakanian.
Filled out those cards just in case we want to repeat the same misunderstanding what happened last time. We didn't know we could approach, and if you guys have any questions on that.
Last time they didn't fill out a card, so we request that they fill out a card and be present and available. In case you have any questions, you can ask them the questions, and then they won't go away, and then once you take action. So unless they want to add anything, obviously, commissioners, if you have questions, you can ask them. But I guess they just fill out the card to make sure they're here.
Okay.
And if you have questions, they can answer them.
Good enough. Okay, so unless anybody has some questions.
No questions.
No questions.
Okay, that's good, thanks, I think. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing then. So will somebody like to move the motion? Or if there's any further comments?
Well, I move we approve the application, the motion, or the application at 6A, that we approve the motion for the owner's permits for 6 vehicles.
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and second. Let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Flood?
Yes.
Commissioner Sahakian?
Yes.
Commissioner Yakubian?
Yes.
Commissioner Wiseman?
Yes.
Chairperson Welch?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, next item, please.
Item 7 is commission, staff comments, updates.
And members of the Transportation Parking Commission, I just wanted to share with you, we left these for you that, with our transit system, and we're certainly supportive of bicycle lanes and the use of bicycles on any other mode of transportation other than single vehicles. So this is only for your information we provided to you. Also that my goal would be at the next commission meeting to essentially, we don't have a specific action item. There might be something I will have to bring, but I would like to show you what we're doing in terms of our bicycle master plan. And the updates we're going through, I'd like to show you part of our staff's preliminary efforts of updating the bicycle master plan map. We've been very active with the staff from other departments looking at bicycle facilities in other cities, what other cities are doing. Yourself, Mr. Chairman, attended a tour of Long Beach. Last weekend, or Thursday, Friday, we went to Berkeley, looked at their facilities, and they're very active. Of course, they have a different demographic, a lot of students, a lot of them who ride bikes to and from school or in the residential area, so they've done a lot. Some of them might be applicable to Glendale, some of them may not because of the demographics or some of the physical issues that we have. So I'd like to bring that to the commission, kind of get your input before we go too far in terms of here's the designation, this is the type of facilities we're looking. There's many, many different ideas. We can be very aggressive at one end and do many things and take away maybe a parking lane or take away a lane and put in bike lanes, versus putting sharrows or those designations on the pavement that we have in different areas, or striping a type 2 or bicycle facility in different parts of the city. So that would be our goal, to bring that to you next week with probably a lot of slides to show you what other cities are doing, get your input up front, and then we go back to the drawing board and try to piece that together. Eventually, our goal would be to go to City Council, kind of give them that bicycle master plan concept, or the preliminary concept from the Commission. And once we are there, then we can actually formalize it, get a final approval on it, so that as we widen streets or as we build new streets or we pave streets, in those areas is where we have the opportunity to actually put in bike lane, because it's very difficult to go in and grind out existing striping and try to put in new facilities in there. This includes all the bicycle amenities, bicycle rack, bicycle lockers, bicycle programs, et cetera, et cetera. Those will be part of our goal, is to give you a preliminary presentation at your next meeting.
When is the next meeting?
Your next meeting would be
Memorial Day.
Let's see. That's was the other part that I wanted to discuss, because sometimes we fall on the. That's May 24th, and Memorial Day weekend is the 31st. So we'll go with the fourth Monday as it's scheduled, 24th of May.
Okay.
And Memorial is the 31st.
So it's the fourth Monday, not the last Monday of each.
No, it's the fourth Monday. That's right. Okay. Some months we have 5 Mondays, and we stick to the fourth Monday.
So we lucked out. Okay.
Yes.
I wanted to make a quick comment. Actually, I'd like to talk briefly about the police unity tour. On May 9th, we are going to be having, not here, it's going to start at the World Trade Center. There's going to be about over 1,000 officers, police officers, who participate in this event, and they ride their bicycles from World Trade Center down to Washington, D.C., to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. This is something that goes on every year. This year, from Glendale Police Department, we have Sergeant Abrahamian, Officer Sue Shine. I'm sure she gets that a little bit all the time. And then there's Mike Woolner, Victor Jackson, and Mike Richardson. They're all going to be representing Glendale. In addition to them, also the father and brother of Glendale Detective Chuck Lazaretto, who was killed in the line of duty in 1997. Each of these fine individuals are giving up their time to go to participate in this. The goal of it is simple: to just bring about awareness of officers who have died in the line of duty, and to raise funds for this memorial, which really relies primarily on private donations. So I just wanted to mention this. If anyone was interested in donating, they can contact Sergeant Abrahamian at 818-572-6113. It's a fine organization and event. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on it, but what's the city's position these days on traffic circles, roundabouts? Are they a dead letter, unacceptable, or they're still be considered from time to time?
Commissioner Ford, they are part of our traffic calming toolbox. And as a matter of fact, as I said, I saw quite a few of them in Berkeley. We tried in the Mountain Rossmoyne traffic calming area to put in some temporary ones. Unfortunately, I think from the lessons we learned with those traffic circles, you almost want to put them in permanently, because when you put in a temporary with wheel stops and delineators, they don't look very good, and sometimes people get confused and they're not as effective as you put in the permanent ones. But that's certainly a good traffic calming measure, but it needs to be used in conjunction with others. I mean, by themselves, technically from the studies we've seen, they do not replace speed humps or bumps that are installed. But it is effective, and it is used if you have multiple traffic circles instead of putting humps sometimes.
And do you always include stop signs, or because in Europe, as you know, they're a substitute for stop signs?
Yes, that is a big debate in the U.S. Unfortunately, what happens is we end up putting them at four-way stops. In fact, I asked that question in Berkeley. They had many four-way stops, and they put in the traffic circles as well to even emphasize more. We had that problem at Riverdale, Columbus. We had the existing four-way stop, and then we put in traffic circle. From a liability standpoint, you worry that if I remove the stop signs where it was a four-way stop was already justified, and then put a circle, if you have some accidents, and then what position you're going to be taking. So it is a big debate among traffic engineers, but I agree with you that the European ones, they don't have. You just approach it and you slow down.
Essentially,
and you go
it's a yield.
It's a yield, exactly. So that is a big debate, and Berkeley has the same problem as California, City of Los Angeles, everybody else does.
Going up to the Glendale Sports Complex, there is one. I don't recall having stop signs around that,
Okay,
right?
that one, because we didn't have a four-way stop. It's in most cases, there's four-way stops, and where you put in a traffic circle. I mean, Berkeley has done quite a few of those. But in that case, because we didn't have a four-way stop, we didn't put in the traffic circle, and we didn't worry about the traffic control there.
And you have some chokers there, too.
We also have a chokers, yes. So as I said, you have to have a combination, and we have speed humps, too.
Speed humps also.
Yeah.
I know.
It's a long stretch
Right.
going to the sports complex. So we
In
did a
Oregon,
bunch-
the choker seems like to be very popular more than the roundabouts.
Yes.
I mean, of course, if the street width allows it.
They're not as effective, again, based on the speed
Right.
surveys, but there are a tool. The chokers, traffic circles, and the speed humps are part of our existing traffic calming guidance. So I jotted that down, and we'll bring that back to you in the future to kind of have an overall look at the traffic calming guidelines and looking at some parts of the city more as a whole. We're working on it. As Tommy gets a lot of these complaints, the ones that are very critical, we're bringing them up. There's some that are really marginal, but they still have a problem. So we're trying to look at them in a more of an area-wide basis and say, okay, even if it doesn't meet it, but you have multiple streets that are having this marginal problem or they're almost there, should we really do an area-wide problem? Because that's what happened in Mountain Rossman. We could have just done one corner of it, but then it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, so we looked at the whole area at once.
Okay. You have some?
I was just going to ask if there was any update on when City Council might be hearing the GNS transit appeal.
The GNS transit appeal was originally scheduled for May 11th. However, the applicant, because of their attorneys and had some kind of a conflict, and they requested that be postponed to June 15.
Okay.
That's the latest. But I'll keep the commission posted because we were working on a staff report to put it together and have it ready for the May 11th. But then today, our city attorney's office got contacted to reschedule because of,
Mr. Baker or Mr. Gantis has a schedule conflict.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
In the spirit of biking stuff, our good friend Colin sent me a notice that this coming Saturday is the historic Glendale neighborhood bike ride from 9 to 12 Saturday morning, and they're supposed to meet at 227 North Brand. I'm not sure exactly what is at that location, but so that's this coming Saturday, May 1st, historic Glendale neighborhood bike ride. So that's it.
One other comment, Mr. Bagdanian. I was driving San Fernando Road and was heading northbound from Colorado, and was stuck in traffic. Brutal traffic, heavy traffic. I thought it's an accident first, but I decided to stay in traffic to find out what it is. 20 minutes later, I get to an intersection where they were doing signal work. I believe it was at Doran, if I'm not mistaken. Now, they had posted the temporary stop signs on Type 1 barricades, but my feeling was that on a major thoroughfare such as San Fernando Road with trucks and what have you, you do need some type of, especially it's a T intersection on one side. You need, I understand we don't have parking officers to control traffic, such as some other cities. But on a street such as San Fernando, Glen Oaks, if the signals are down and there's maintenance work to be done for 2-3 hours, I think it's warranted to have a police traffic unit flushing the direction basically that's heaviest. In this case would have been north and south San Fernando Road. It took me 20 minutes just north of Home Depot to the freeway.
Commissioner, can you give me the time approximately you said?
It was today at approximately 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m. I want to say.
When that's happening.
Yeah.
So they must be there.
Probably. Maybe they got there a little later, but it was my luck.
We do request that it has occurred that we've had police officers there. There are times, where there's a lot of utility work being done, and unexpectedly, we've had some problems where they've cut some cables, and things went to four-way flash. By the time you get the officer there, there's a problem. But I will definitely check on it too.
Well, there was no power, which told me basically it was a scheduled.
Because our water and power at the corner of Doran and San Fernando, they had to replace a major vault
location,
and
maybe
remove a major pole at that northeast corner. And there's been a lot of switching back and forth between that. So once they disconnect the power, then there goes the signal. It all depends. I'll definitely check into it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're ready to move on to final item.
Item 8, adjournment.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Adjourned.